Some of the most exhausted people in the world are not tired because they work too hard. They're tired because they pretend too much. Pretending to be okay when they're falling apart. Pretending to be strong when they feel emotionally drained. Pretending to smile so nobody asks questions they don't have the energy to answer. And after a while, something dangerous happens. You become so focused on meeting everyone else's expectations that you slowly lose connection with yourself. You say, "I'm fine," when you're not. You stay quiet to avoid conflict. You carry pain in silence because you don't want to disappoint anyone. But the truth is, pretending may protect you from judgment, yet it also disconnects you from peace, honesty, and real happiness. The strongest people are not the ones who hide their struggles perfectly. The strongest people are the ones who finally become honest about what they feel, what they need, and what they can no longer tolerate. Because healing does not begin when you impress people. It begins when you stop performing for them. So today, I want to talk about the emotional weight of pretending, why so many people feel lost while looking completely fine on the outside, and how your life begins to change the moment you stop hiding who you truly are. Pretending may look harmless in the beginning, but over time it slowly disconnects you from who you truly are. Many people spend years acting like a version of themselves they think others will accept. They hide their emotions, silence their opinions, fake their happiness, and adjust their personality depending on who they are around. At first, it feels easier than being judged, rejected, or misunderstood. But the more you pretend, the more exhausting life becomes because you are constantly performing instead of living honestly. One of the most dangerous parts about pretending is that it often becomes automatic. People become so used to saying, "I'm okay," that they stop recognizing what they actually feel. They smile while emotionally exhausted. They continue giving to others while feeling completely empty inside. They laugh in rooms where they secretly feel lonely. Eventually, they become disconnected from their own needs because they are too focused on protecting everyone else's comfort. Pretending also creates emotional pressure that slowly builds over time. Carrying unspoken pain requires energy. Hiding anxiety, sadness, disappointment, or frustration every day drains the mind and body. Many people wonder why they feel mentally tired all the time without realizing they are exhausted from constantly wearing emotional masks. The fear of being vulnerable forces them to suppress everything they truly feel, and that emotional suppression slowly damages confidence, self-worth, and inner peace. Social media and modern culture make this even worse. People feel pressure to appear successful, happy, attractive, and emotionally strong all the time. They compare their private struggles to everyone else's public highlights. This creates a dangerous cycle where authenticity feels risky and pretending feels necessary. People stop asking themselves who they truly are and start asking what version of themselves will receive approval, validation, or attention. The problem is that pretending may gain temporary acceptance, but it also creates loneliness. When people only know the version of you that is filtered, controlled, and emotionally hidden, real connection becomes impossible. You may be surrounded by people and still feel deeply alone because nobody actually knows what you are carrying inside. Real relationships can only exist where honesty exists. Pretending also weakens identity because every time you ignore your true feelings to fit expectations, you teach yourself that your real self is not enough. Over time, self-doubt grows stronger. You begin questioning your worth, your voice, and your value because you have spent so long prioritizing approval over authenticity. Many people lose confidence not because they are weak, but because they have abandoned themselves for too long. The strongest transformation begins when a person becomes tired of performing. There comes a moment when emotional exhaustion becomes greater than the fear of honesty. That is when healing starts, not when life becomes perfect, but when you stop pretending that pain does not exist. Real strength is not hiding emotions perfectly. Real strength is having the courage to face yourself honestly and allowing your life to reflect who you truly are instead of who others expect you to be. Many people spend their entire lives trying to make everyone around them happy, believing that constantly pleasing others will bring love, acceptance, and peace. They say yes when they want to say no. They ignore their own needs to avoid disappointing people. They stay available for everyone even when they are emotionally drained. At first, it may seem kind, generous, or selfless, but over time pleasing becomes emotionally exhausting because it forces you to constantly sacrifice yourself for the comfort of others. People pleasing often begins from fear, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of abandonment, or fear of not being enough. Many people learn early in life that being liked feels safer than being honest. So they become experts at adjusting themselves to fit what everyone else wants. They avoid difficult conversations, hide their real opinions, and carry emotional pain in silence because they are terrified of being judged or disliked. The problem is that when you constantly prioritize everyone else's happiness, your own emotional health slowly starts collapsing. You become physically present in your life, but emotionally disconnected from yourself. You spend so much time managing other people's feelings that you stop paying attention to your own. Exhaustion builds quietly because you are always giving energy away without allowing yourself time to recover. People pleasers also carry invisible pressure every day. They feel responsible for fixing problems, keeping peace, and making sure nobody is upset. Even small disagreements can create anxiety because they fear disappointing others. This constant emotional tension keeps the mind overwhelmed. Instead of living freely, they begin living cautiously, always thinking about how others might react. One of the most painful parts about people pleasing is that it often creates resentment. The more you ignore your own needs, the more empty and frustrated you become inside. You start feeling unseen, unappreciated, and emotionally tired because you are constantly giving without receiving the same care in return. Yet many people continue the cycle because they believe their worth depends on being useful to others. Over time, people pleasing also damages identity. When you spend years shaping yourself around other people's expectations, you slowly lose touch with your own desires, boundaries, and values. You stop asking yourself what makes you happy because your focus is always on everyone else. Many people reach a point where they no longer know who they truly are outside of helping, pleasing, or supporting others. Real peace begins when you understand that you cannot build a healthy life by abandoning yourself. Being kind does not mean constantly sacrificing your mental and emotional well-being. Setting boundaries does not make you selfish. Saying no does not make you cruel. Honest relationships are built through respect, not endless self-sacrifice. The strongest people are not the ones who keep everyone happy all the time. The strongest people are the ones who finally realize that their value does not come from constant approval, endless giving, or emotional performance. True confidence begins when you stop measuring your worth by how comfortable you make everyone else feel, and start respecting your own emotional needs with the same care you give to others. Many people believe that hiding their pain makes them strong. They convince themselves that staying silent, acting unaffected, and pretending everything is fine will somehow make the hurt disappear. But pain that is ignored does not vanish. It stays inside, slowly affecting the mind, emotions, and even the body. Suppressed emotions do not heal simply because they are hidden. In many cases, they become heavier over time. People often hide pain because they are afraid of appearing weak or vulnerable. They fear being judged, misunderstood, or becoming a burden to others. So instead of expressing what they truly feel, they build emotional walls. They smile during conversations while silently struggling inside. They continue working, helping others, and fulfilling responsibilities while carrying exhaustion nobody can see. From the outside, everything may appear normal, but internally they are fighting battles that never receive attention or healing. The problem with hidden pain is that it eventually begins to shape behavior. Unspoken sadness can turn into emotional numbness. Buried anger can become frustration or resentment. Ignored anxiety can slowly grow stronger until the mind feels constantly overwhelmed. Many people do not realize how deeply unresolved emotions are affecting their lives because they have become used to functioning while emotionally disconnected. Hiding pain also creates loneliness. When you never allow yourself to be honest about your struggles, people only know the version of you that you choose to show them. Real connection becomes difficult because true connection requires vulnerability. A person can be surrounded by family, friends, or coworkers and still feel completely alone simply because nobody truly knows what they are carrying inside. Over time, emotional suppression becomes exhausting. Pretending to be okay every day requires energy. Carrying sadness in silence drains mental strength. Many people feel constantly tired, unmotivated, or emotionally distant without realizing that the real cause is years of unprocessed pain. The mind and body were never designed to carry emotional weight forever without release. Healing begins with honesty, not performative honesty for attention, but real honesty with yourself about what hurts, what exhausted you, and what you can no longer continue pretending about. Acknowledging pain does not make someone weak. In reality, it often requires more courage to face emotional truth than to keep hiding behind fake strength. Many people delay healing because they believe they need to appear strong for everyone else. But strength is not pretending nothing affects you. Strength is having the courage to confront what you feel instead of running from it. Emotional healing only begins when pain is recognized instead of denied. No person can fully heal while constantly hiding parts of themselves. Growth requires emotional truth. Peace requires self-awareness. The moment someone stops suppressing everything they feel and begins allowing themselves to process emotions honestly, life slowly starts changing. Not because pain disappears instantly, but because hidden wounds can finally begin receiving the attention, understanding, and healing they were denied for so long. Many people spend so much time trying to impress others that they slowly lose connection with themselves. They become focused on being accepted, admired, or validated, believing that approval from other people will finally make them feel worthy. So they adjust their personality, hide parts of themselves, and constantly shape their behavior around what others expect. At first, it may seem harmless, but over time this constant performance creates emotional exhaustion and identity loss. The desire to impress people often begins from insecurity. Deep down, many people fear that who they truly are may not be enough. They believe they need to appear stronger, smarter, happier, more successful, or more perfect in order to be valued. This creates pressure to maintain an image instead of living authentically. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to gain approval or avoid rejection. Social media has intensified this struggle. People compare their real lives to carefully edited versions of other people's lives. They begin chasing appearances instead of peace. Success becomes about looking successful. Happiness becomes about appearing happy. People stop asking themselves what genuinely fulfills them and start asking what will impress others the most. Over time, identity becomes built around external validation instead of internal truth. Trying to impress everyone also forces people to silence their real thoughts and emotions. They avoid saying what they truly believe because they fear judgment. They agree with things they dislike. They stay in unhealthy relationships to avoid disappointing others. They pursue careers, lifestyles, or goals that no longer align with who they are simply because they want approval. Slowly, the gap between their real self and their performed self becomes larger and larger. One of the most painful consequences of this is emotional emptiness. Even when people receive praise, attention, or validation, it rarely feels satisfying for long because deep down they know they are being appreciated for a version of themselves that is incomplete or filtered. External validation cannot fully heal internal disconnection. A person can appear successful and admired while secretly feeling lost inside because they no longer know who they truly are beneath the performance. Losing yourself does not happen suddenly. It happens through small daily compromises. Every time you ignore your needs to fit expectations, every time you hide your truth to keep people comfortable, and every time you prioritize image over authenticity, you move further away from yourself. Eventually, many people wake up feeling emotionally disconnected from their own lives because they spent years becoming who others wanted them to be. Real confidence begins when you stop chasing approval and start valuing honesty. Not everyone will understand you, agree with you, or accept you, and that is part of life. Trying to please everyone often leads to abandoning yourself in the process. Authenticity may feel uncomfortable at first because it risks judgment, but it also creates freedom. The moment you stop living for constant validation is the moment you begin reconnecting with your real identity, your real values, and the life that genuinely reflects who you are instead of who others expect you to become. Most people think peace comes from success, approval, relationships, or achieving certain goals. But in reality, peace comes from honesty. It comes from no longer pretending, no longer performing, and no longer carrying emotional weight just to keep others comfortable. Peace is not something that is given by the outside world. It is something that is created internally when a person stops fighting their own truth. Many people live their lives trying to manage how they are perceived. They try to look strong when they feel weak, happy when they feel broken, and confident when they feel uncertain. This constant performance slowly creates inner tension. The mind becomes divided between what is real and what is shown to others. That internal conflict is one of the biggest sources of stress and emotional exhaustion in modern life. When a person stops being honest with themselves, even small things start to feel heavy. They wake up tired without knowing why. They lose interest in things they once enjoyed. They feel disconnected from their own thoughts and emotions. This happens because pretending requires continuous mental effort. It is like carrying invisible weight everywhere you go, and over time, that weight becomes exhausting. Peace begins when you stop trying to maintain an image and start accepting reality as it is. Not the version of life you want others to believe, but the actual experience you are living. This means acknowledging your feelings instead of suppressing them, recognizing your limits instead of denying them, and understanding your needs instead of ignoring them. It is uncomfortable at first because honesty often reveals truths that have been avoided for a long time. Many people fear that if they stop performing, they will lose respect, love, or connection. But the opposite is often true. Authenticity attracts deeper and more meaningful relationships. When you stop pretending, you allow people to connect with the real you, not a version created for approval. Real peace cannot exist in relationships built on performance because there is always pressure to maintain the illusion. Letting go of performance also means letting go of unnecessary expectations. People begin to realize that they do not have to prove their worth constantly. They do not need to meet every expectation set by society, family, or social comparison. Peace grows when a person understands that they are not responsible for fulfilling everyone's idea of who they should be. True peace is not loud. It is not found in validation, attention, or achievement. It is found in quiet acceptance of yourself, your journey, and your reality. It comes from no longer running from your emotions, no longer hiding your struggles, and no longer trying to be someone you are not. When a person stops performing and starts living honestly, life becomes lighter, clearer, and more aligned with who they truly are beneath all the pressure and expectation. Most people spend years living a version of life that does not truly belong to them because they are afraid to be fully honest about who they are. They follow expectations, adapt to pressure, and shape their personality based on what feels acceptable to others. Over time, this creates a disconnect between their real self and the life they are living. The more they ignore their inner truth, the more distant they feel from themselves. Authenticity is often misunderstood as something risky or selfish, but in reality, it is the foundation of mental and emotional stability. When a person is not authentic, they constantly have to remember what they said, how they acted, and how they are expected to behave in different situations. This creates mental fatigue. The mind becomes overloaded with maintaining an image instead of simply living naturally. But when a person is authentic, there is no need to perform. There is only alignment between thoughts and actions. Many people lose themselves gradually. It does not happen in one moment. It happens through small compromises, saying yes when they want to say no, staying silent when they want to speak, laughing at things they do not find funny, agreeing with opinions they do not believe in. Each small compromise may seem harmless, but over time they build a life that feels foreign to them. Eventually, they start questioning why they feel disconnected, even though everything on the outside may look fine. Authenticity also plays a major role in confidence. When people live in alignment with their true selves, they no longer feel the pressure to maintain a fake identity. They do not need to compare themselves with others or constantly seek validation. Their confidence becomes stable because it is rooted in truth rather than approval. On the other hand, pretending creates insecurity because it requires constant validation from external sources to maintain the illusion. One of the biggest fears people have about authenticity is rejection. They worry that if they show their real thoughts, emotions, or boundaries, they will lose relationships or opportunities. So they hide parts of themselves to stay accepted. But this leads to a different kind of loss, the loss of self, respect, and inner peace. When you continuously suppress who you are, you may gain acceptance from others, but lose connection with yourself. Living authentically does not mean being careless or saying everything without thought. It means being honest in a way that respects both yourself and others. It means making choices based on truth rather than fear. It means allowing your actions to reflect your real values instead of social pressure. This alignment creates a sense of clarity that pretending can never provide. Over time, authenticity becomes freedom. The freedom to speak without fear, to act without pressure, and to exist without constantly managing perceptions. Life becomes less about maintaining an image and more about experiencing reality fully. When a person finally stops hiding and starts living in alignment with their truth, they begin to feel lighter, more grounded, and more connected to themselves than ever before. Real change in life does not begin with motivation, inspiration, or external pressure. It begins the moment a person becomes tired of living a life that does not feel like their own. Most people wait for circumstances to change before they change themselves, but transformation actually starts internally. It starts when someone realizes that continuing the same patterns will always lead to the same emotional results, no matter how much they hope for something different. Many people delay change because comfort feels easier than uncertainty. Even when they are unhappy, stuck, or emotionally exhausted, they stay in familiar situations because at least they know what to expect. The mind often prefers predictable pain over unpredictable growth. This is why people remain in cycles that no longer serve them. They know something needs to change, but fear keeps them attached to what feels familiar. The turning point in life usually comes quietly. It is not always dramatic or sudden. It is often a small internal realization that something is no longer acceptable. It could be emotional exhaustion, repeated disappointment, or a growing sense of emptiness. At that moment, a person begins to question the life they have been accepting for too long. That questioning is the beginning of transformation. Real change requires honesty, not just with others, but with yourself. It requires admitting what is not working, what is hurting, and what has been ignored for too long. Many people avoid this step because honesty forces them to confront uncomfortable truths. But without truth, change becomes impossible. You cannot fix what you refuse to acknowledge. After honesty comes responsibility. This is where most people struggle. It is easy to blame circumstances, people, or timing, but real growth happens when a person takes responsibility for what they can control. Even if past choices were influenced by fear or pressure, the present moment always offers the chance to choose differently. Responsibility is not about guilt. It is about power. It is the realization that your next decision can create a different direction for your life. Change also requires consistency. Many people start strong but return to old habits when discomfort appears. That is because comfort is always trying to pull them back. Real transformation happens when a person continues even when motivation disappears. It happens through repeated action, not temporary emotion. Small, consistent steps eventually create a completely different identity. As change begins, discomfort is unavoidable. Growth always feels unfamiliar at first because it challenges old patterns. But discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It is often a sign that something is finally shifting in the right direction. The mind resists change because it prefers safety, but safety does not always equal growth. Over time, as new habits replace old ones and new decisions replace old patterns, life begins to feel different. Not because everything becomes perfect, but because alignment slowly replaces confusion. The person begins to feel more connected to their choices, more aware of their direction, and more honest with themselves. That internal shift is what creates lasting transformation, not external approval or temporary success, but the quiet realization that life is finally starting to reflect who they are becoming instead of who they used to be.